Question: what is insanity? Insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. And it seems like Americans, we the people, will not get out of it. We continue to allow an economic system to run us ragged and to take our monies, our income, our wealth, and transfer it to a few. And, you know, the economists that fall within this system, they're not bad. Today we have Larry Summers being interviewed by Chuck Todd. And some of the things he said was cool, pretty good. But he showed that he has no idea what the average American person goes through. Because he makes it seem as just numbers when it comes to how an economic system is supposed to work. And those numbers that he infer only satisfies the whims of a few. I want you to listen to this because, again, it's not all bad. But the parts that he gets wrong, the parts that he gets horrendously wrong, is why we repeat the same things over and over again, why we have these cycles. Later on, I'm going to have Professor Richard Wolff, who's going to talk on some of these issues. But let's go ahead and listen to him, and then we'll take it on the other side.
It's likely that if on Inauguration Day, someone had told President Biden that more than a year later, he could have unemployment at 3.6% and dropping, wages in the stock market on the way up, and the housing market humming, he probably would have taken that deal. But there was a fine print: inflation. It's at a 4-decade high, and that has Americans sour about the economy overall. In our latest NBC News poll, adults disapprove of President Biden's handling of the economy by a nearly 2-to-1 margin, and it only has continued to grow. One person who saw inflation coming is former Clinton Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, who is now also predicting the U.S. is likely to fall into a recession next year if things don't change quickly.
Good to be with you.
Let me start with, what did you see that so many others missed? You know, we've seen predictions of inflation over the last 40 years. You're the one that seems to have gotten the timing of this hit right. What did you see?
I saw that we had a tidal wave of demand between zero interest rates from the Fed, a huge outpouring of saving that people had pent up from the COVID period, and massive fiscal policy from the December bill and then the stimulus bill that was passed. It just seemed to me that demand was going to overheat. We were going to have labor shortages. The bathtub was going to overflow, so to speak, and the inflation rate was going to pick up. And I think that did happen. And then things that I certainly didn't see, and I don't think others could have seen, the Ukraine war and all of the interferences in supply associated with that have created a bit of a perfect storm.
I'm curious, is it possible that with COVID and all the disruptions that caused, did we have basically two choices, a recession in the moment or throw money at the problem and risk inflation? Were we sort of stuck between two bad choices here?
I think we had very, very difficult choices, and I think people with good faith made choices. And I think while I disagreed with them at the time, I think the choices reflected the consensus of many outside economists. I think we were too slow to pick up on how rapidly the economy was recovering, and therefore we injected more demand into the economy, both in terms of deficits and in terms of monetary policy, than looks today to have been the right amount. Some of it was we were buying an insurance policy that we turn out not to have needed, just like I bought life insurance last year, and in a sense I wasted my premiums, but in a sense it was necessary to spend that money. But I was concerned last year that we were injecting too much demand into the economy, given all the configurations. And I don't think it was a sound strategy to create as big labor shortages as the labor shortages that we did create.
So, a recession, is it inevitable or is there a way to avoid it?
Nothing is inevitable or certain in economics, Chuck. The painful fact, though, is that historically, when we've had inflation above 4 and we've had unemployment below 4, essentially always since World War II, that's been followed by a recession within the next 2 years. Perhaps we will be fortunate and there'll be sufficiently rapid adjustments in commodity prices and other bottlenecks that will make that not happen. Perhaps the Fed will be extraordinarily skillful. But I think the Fed, and lucky, but I think the Fed has a very, very difficult job. I think we can make a contribution by doing things like the Strategic Petroleum Reserve release that holds down where oil prices would otherwise go. I think it's a time when we need to be looking at tariff reduction, because potentially that could take a percentage point off of the CPI. I think we need to look wherever we can at buying things more inexpensively when the federal government is purchasing. We need to look at immigration flows so as to address this labor shortage. But it's not going to be easy starting from where we are.
You've been a supporter of most of the Build Back Better agenda. What should be focused on that actually could reduce inflation and avoid a recession?
I think probably the most important thing, ironically, is some of the revenue increases that the president has talked about. Be very substantial benefits to closing a whole range of tax loopholes.
What kind of tax? Because you don't like the billionaire tax.
Yellen's.
You don't like the billionaire tax. What kind of tax would
I don't
you
like the. You're right. I don't like. You're right. I don't like the billionaire tax, but I do like the provisions that really go after corporations shielding money in the Cayman Islands, shielding money in Ireland. We negotiated a historic agreement to enable the world to tax global corporations, which it was losing the ability to do. And that agreement could fail if we don't do our part to implement the U.S. measures that are part of it. And we'd sacrifice a lot of revenue and pump up a lot of demand. So I think that is a very important set of steps. I think it's important to remember that over the longer term, the president's infrastructure bill is going to increase the capacity of the economy, and that will be a favorable development. But over the nearer term, I think the concentration on revenue is probably most important. For other reasons, I'd very much like to see the green investments that the administration is proposing, which over time will reduce our dependence on fossil fuels.
Okay. First, let me not get completely negative on Larry Summers, economist Larry Summers. He said 3 good things. 1, we want to have green energy. We do want that. He also said, for this problem that we have with employment, having more people employed, it would be good to open up immigration much better than it is, more efficient than it is. That's what he's implying. And third, he actually wants to tax and close these shelters, right? So all those are great things that he wants to do. But where he fails, seriously, is understanding that billionaires don't matter, the average American citizen matter. When he talks about what Biden did when he gave the American Rescue Plan, when he gave when he provided all those tax credits, etc., to inflate the economy, when he said that we increase demand too much, what is he saying? That's a technical term, right? We increase demand. We always talk about the supply side economics, where these guys want to give you supply and with the expectation that demand will come. But we believe in demand side economics. Demand side economics says we, the people, are going to determine what demands we have on the economy. We want cars, then you build cars. We want gas, you create gas. Those are the things that we want. Now, he centralized on saying we've added too much demand into the economy without adequate, and here's the kicker, by creating deficits, right? He doesn't want a billionaire tax, and we'll get into that a little bit, and at the same time, he also just wants to recover the net big taxes from those people who offshore it. So in effect, he's saying, I don't want to tax enough to cover what people have been denied for decades, meaning social services, education, family leave, and all of that we ultimately pay for out of taxes and deficits. He doesn't want to pay for it for real because he doesn't want the billionaire tax. So he wants it solved by just not giving it to the American people. So once again, billionaires are protected by our system, right? In other words, we don't want a billionaire tax. And we create demand. Labor shortages is the way he expresses it. But we don't have serious political will to go ahead and bring the people in that needs to work. But he misses an important point as well. He also misses the point that when Americans are paid, our utilization rate right now, the employment utilization rate is about 61%. So while he talks about demand increase too fast with labor shortages, he fails to tell you that labor shortages can also be mitigated by increasing the utilization rate for the American citizens. What does that mean? More people simply decide that they want to go to work. But why will they go to work if they don't have child care? Why will they go to work if they're paid menial salaries that's not worth the effort to put in when they can sit back and, kind of hustle around, which is what many, the utilization rate instead of being 67% is at 61%. So we could mitigate immediate employment issues by simply raising wages. And people say, well, that's inflationary. Not necessarily. It's not inflationary if we're more productive, which is what we would be, right? So if you keep doing things the same way over and over again, meaning not paying people what they're worth, numero uno. Numero dos, allowing monies to go directly to the top where others are fighting for money, which is what he's also proposing, what he's also supports as a neoliberal, and not change immigration policy where employment is needed to bring them in. Again, insanity, doing the same thing over and over again and having these up and down cycles. We get inflation because why? Inflation is not here because it has to be here. People like to talk about some market. The market is a mythical market. Don't ever let you believe, unless there's a sugar shortage, an oil shortage, and shortages in these areas en masse, the choice to increase prices is just that, a choice by the people who have pricing power, and you don't. You doubt me? People haven't started buying less gasoline, but they just raise the prices of gasoline. Why? Because they can. When oil was $150 a barrel, we weren't paying $4.50 for gasoline. Again, they do it because they can. And the same apply to product after product after product. They choose to have inflation. And if you doubt it, if inflation were real, it would be right down the chain, right? So that when you look at these companies' profits, the profits would not show an excessive gain. Why? Because that inflation would have said, if I am a baker who inflated my bread prices. It meant that my wheat prices went up. And if that wheat price went up, it likely went up because fertilizers and other things went up. All those things in the chain are not happening. And how do we know it's not happening? Because those people at the point where these prices are increasing rapidly, their profits are record profits. It means this isn't money going through the chain. This is money going to the shareholders. This is money going to people who just says, I can price it and take your money away. And we accept it because when you go to CNBC or MSNBC or CNN or ABC and talk about inflation, they make it seem like this is some market force that's on its own. The market is on its own. The market is a mythical market. There's no market. The mythical market is that market dominated by a few people who have pricing power. They select what the prices are and you pay it. And that is the reason I am absolutely for certain industries, not most, but for critical industry, utilities, energy, healthcare, they all should be nationalized and only the private sector should be involved in things that, you build your phone and all these other issues. Yeah, private sector, restaurant, all the grocery stores, all of that private sector. But critical issues that takes care of mobility, health, and so forth do not belong as a for-profit motive. There's no incentive to get you healthy because a healthy person doesn't use health care. There's no incentive to give you low prices on gasoline because they can price and make more money because you have to drive. Understand this, folks. Larry Summers keeps telling you how our system is going to operate, not how our system must operate. Remember that. Those who have pricing power are the ones who control the market. There is no market. The market is mythical. It's a mythical market controlled by a few who have pricing power and control the sources of production and services. Don't ever forget that or believe what you hear on TV. They must indoctrinate you. They must brainwash you into thinking there is a mythical market that supersedes that person who gouges you. We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead, number 1, subscribe to our channel, and number 2, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.